Hey folks, your OS Reviews. You're watching our video first look and quick review of the iRulu 20Pro. This is an LED projector that creates up to a 200-inch display on your wall, and it sells on Amazon for about $210, which isn't too expensive when compared to big box brand names, but it's slightly more pricey than other Shenzhen or China-based projectors we've seen in the past. And a reason why this one is a bit more expensive is because the 20 Pro has Android 4.4 built in, which means it has a processor, which is an ARM Cortex 1.4 GHz quad-core chipset. It has 1 gig of DDR3 RAM, 8 gigs of built-in flash storage, which means that technically you can just use the projector itself to watch videos, stream content, look at documents, browse the web, without having to plug in a separate phone or a computer or even a tablet. So it's like a dedicated console, which is kind of interesting. We really haven't seen this before. And for that price point, we think what you're getting is quite fair. Otherwise, don't expect amazing specifications. It's still going to do the job, again, for streaming content from sites like Netflix or YouTube, but playing back 3D intensive games might not be the best idea for the processor on board. Otherwise, you can see that the design itself is quite clean, and other specs include a native resolution of 800 by 480, which isn't so great, but when you project it onto the wall, the result is actually decent, and the color saturation as well as the temperature all seems pretty nicely calibrated, and you can adjust that further in the settings. It does support up to 1080p if you plug in a Blu-ray disc player or upscale DVD player. So we'll talk about that later on when we show you the video results. But for now, taking a closer look at the design, it's made of this glossy material that does attract a fair amount of fingerprints. You can get it in black or white. There's ventilation grills on each side to prevent the unit from overheating, and there are fans inside, so that it does have a slight noise in the background when you're using it. The front features a lens which can be adjusted in terms of the focus, depending on how far away you are from the wall. And here is a rubber cover to protect a lens when you're not watching videos with it. The very top features all the controls, so they correspond to the power on-off switch, which has an LED ring which will light up to tell you when the unit is turned on. And there's also volume controls. There's a source key for you to toggle back and forth between things like HDMI, VGA, using just a built-in chipset, and so on and so forth. There's a menu key, which you can also use to navigate with the up and down keys over here. And there's also an IR sensor on top for the built-in remote control. The back features access to 2 USB inputs, so you can stick in a USB thumb drive if you have it loaded with things like, let's say, music or documents or perhaps songs and videos. You can view that back directly using the Android operating system, which is quite handy. And there are 2 HDMI ports, which is also nice, so you can plug in 2 devices like a tablet or a computer simultaneously, and then toggle back and forth if you're giving a presentation. There's also a DTV signal for the antenna for watching television. There's also a VGA port, as well as the standard RGB cables if you want to use more analog, older style for plugging things in. Finally, there's also an adjustment for the angle of the video, so if you want it tilted or at a certain degree when you're projecting things on a wall, you can easily change that over here. And there's also a mono speaker built in, which is quite loud, but a little bit tinny sounding, as you would expect. We do recommend plugging in your own pair of speakers because that is possible here. And there's just the wall plug. So a pretty clean presentation. The back features rubber feet to prevent the unit from sliding around, some basic info. Interestingly, there isn't any mention of Android operating system on here, even though it does have Wi-Fi, it does have Android OS built in, which is, again, what makes the 20 Pro unique, but no mention here, and not really a mention in the instruction manual either, which is kind of interesting. There's also a back which allows you to screw in a part that allows you to tilt the projector up at a better degree when you're watching videos. Other accessories that you get in the box includes the remote, so here's the pack of things that you get. The remote uses AAA batteries, which are not included. You have to put them in yourself. It actually feels decent. It's made out of plastic, but it has a brushed look to it. The controls are pretty tactile, responsive, and large, as well as risen above the surface. You have access to numbers, as well as selection keys, volume selection keys, and dedicated controls for going back and forth between freezing, pausing a frame, as well as turning the unit on or off. Again, there aren't dedicated controls for the home key or menu or settings. Those tend to be found on most Android devices, so I was also a little bit surprised because looking at the remote, you wouldn't know that the 20 Pro is an Android projector. So again, an interesting omission. Otherwise, we have access to all the cables, inclusive of the power supply, which has a decent length to it. There's also a composite cable built in, and you don't have a HDMI cable included, or also a VGA cable included, but you do have the screws as well as some cleaning cloths for you to clean and dust off the lens when it gets dusty. And finally, you have the aforementioned screw, which you can use at the bottom of the base to get a tilted angle. Next, we're going to take a quick look at how the performance of the unit is when we plug it into the wall. So we now have the projector turned on. You can hear that slight fan noise in the background. That's how loud the ambient sound is. It's not too bad, especially if you're watching a film with the volume turned on. It really is not anything too notable. Right now, we don't have anything because it's on the TV mode, and we don't have an antenna plugged in because, again, in the US, we have now transitioned into digital signals. But you can tell that when the device first turns on, it doesn't automatically boot into Android. It goes into the regular system, and it has actually a dual boot mode, which is kind of interesting. If I press on the enter key for a second, you can see we're on TV. I can change the channel. And if I tap on things like source, then things get kind of interesting. I can go up and down between things like HDMI, the USB sockets, and of course, all the way on the bottom is Android. So this is like the typical operating system that we've seen many times already on most of these low-cost projectors. And so when you get into Android, it's kind of where the real OS or the real standout feature of the 20 Pro comes in. So let's try going into Android and see how that works. Right now I'm using the remote, and it seems fairly sensitive, so it's now going to start booting, and you can see that we're at 720p is the default resolution, at 60 Hertz is the refresh rate. So we're going to have to wait a few seconds for the operating system to fully load. It doesn't load at the same time as when the projector is turned on, which again is kind of interesting. It's two operating systems juggling back and forth. There we go. So we have a heavily skinned version of Android 4.4, as I talked about. This is a very grid-like operating system experience because you can use a remote to navigate up, down, left, and right. It makes navigation a bit easier and simpler as well. You can use it to search up files, to browse the web, to check out your applications, and there's a nice file management system on board as well. The actual remote here doesn't have a air remote functionality, so I can't use it as a cursor to point things on the wall. And another con is there isn't a built-in text entry system that's really simple. It's going to pop up a virtual keyboard, and you have to peck out letters slowly by going up, down, left, and right through the QWERTY layout. So I would really recommend using one of the USB ports as a peripheral port for plugging in a keyboard, or maybe connecting a wireless keyboard. That might be another option that would speed up the typing experience if you're going to be doing a lot of searching through YouTube or Hulu. So let's take a quick look at the system here. So if I go into settings, I'll show you guys that this is indeed Android 4.4. So I can go through things like the network, set up the password for Wi-Fi, display mode in terms of the resolution, HDMI. I can also use this as a Miracast display, so connecting a smartphone as a secondary source after I've booted into Android. I'm using this kind of like a smart TV experience. There's also timeout times, when to shut the projector off after X minutes of inactivity, digital auto signal detection, and other things. Indeed, we have Android 4.4. And there's more settings that I can go into. That toggles into the traditional Android UI interface, as you can see here. So pretty simple. There's also Bluetooth built on here as well, so you can use that to connect a wireless pair of headphones or a wireless keyboard, as aforementioned. And more things like the location standby mode. There's a GPS, but no full GPS signal on here. Again, that wouldn't really make sense on a projector, so just a quick note. Let's go back into the main menu. You can see that I can still kind of toggle between the secondary UI in terms of the color saturation, noise reduction, and all those things are still available even as I'm in the actual Android operating system. I can still set the time and date, which again, kind of interesting. So let's go back all the way now into the UI. Returning to the main menu screen, we can see that the overall screen resolution and quality is pretty good for a 800 by 480 technical display. Some of the things are upscaled, but you can see that the color as well as the overall appearance of the icons are all fairly legible as well as readable. Color saturation seems good, even though it's a little bit muted and on the dim side of the spectrum, but that's to be expected with most projectors. And right now we're viewing content in the afternoon, so there are some lights in the background, the room is not completely dark, which all distracts from the quality slightly, and if you're in a completely dark environment, perhaps in a theater, the quality of the projector will continue to improve. So we've connected to Wi-Fi now, and we're going to check out some of the other things. You can see that you have access to music, if you have any content stored directly onto the unit, or if you have content on a thumb drive, you can just plug that in and use it. Local, including local files and videos you might want to watch. Checking out the pre-installed applications, we see that Play Store is actually on here as well. So it's something that you can use to directly download any stock applications directly from the marketplace, from games to any video managing sites, to Facebook, to Twitter. If you want to check those occasionally, those all can be done, which is pretty nice. You don't have to sideload any content. Otherwise, you also have things like a browser, which is just a stock browser on board. There's a quick Google search client, gallery for viewing back any images or videos. There's also a quick search client down below, a downloader, and also, again, the aforementioned Miracast for connecting a smartphone onto the device. And again, you have multiple home screens that you can navigate through, and you can also organize them by categories, like your music files, your videos, as you slide left and right, which is pretty convenient and useful. Otherwise, I was a little bit surprised to not see any additional bloatware in the sense of streaming video apps built in, such as you won't see Hulu or Netflix apps pre-installed. You can obviously install those yourselves by just downloading them from the Play Store. It takes just a few seconds to complete, but you do have to do those things yourself. There aren't any extra video playback apps pre-installed, which is, again, a little bit peculiar, something I didn't exactly expect. Checking out the Play Store for a second, it's probably going to ask us to log in, but I can show you the keyboard very quickly. This is the on-screen virtual keyboard. Again, you're going to have to navigate using the buttons here, up, down, left, and right, which becomes quite tedious after a while. So again, this is why I would suggest plugging in a physical keyboard or using a Bluetooth keyboard for text entry. So we're going to check out the web browser built on here, just to give a quick look. It doesn't seem like YouTube, the app is built in, but obviously you can use the browser, go to mobileyoutube.com and play back a few videos that way. And you can see that, again, it provides a pretty good experience overall. Text is definitely legible, and although the processor on here isn't too lightning fast, it still is capable of handling complex pages, also things like New York Times. You can do multiple tabs in the background. You can open up and transition between those tabs as well, and of course go to YouTube. So everything does seem to work. You can check your mail as well from here. So a decent browsing experience, even though it's not extraordinary. Obviously, text entry is, again, something that you'll need to work on by adding your own peripheral or accessory, but that, again, is to be expected. We're now going to play back a quick video clip and show you how the projector looks. Alright, so now a video is playing back in the YouTube player from the browser of the 20 Pro projector. As you can see, the audio quality is actually pretty good. It produces a loud enough sound, and this is only on a pretty low setting right now, and overall you can see that the image quality is pretty enjoyable as well. If you get extremely up close, you will notice some pixelation and some grids, especially in a brighter environment. The quality isn't as sharp looking, but overall it's definitely viewable, and text is also legible, and better than I expected just by looking at the resolution alone. So it seems like a pretty good video watching experience overall, and the speaker is good enough for some basic playback, for some quick clips on YouTube, also for some quick tracks you might be listening to. For longer videos and for longer movies, I would recommend still plugging in your own pair of headphones or speakers. That might produce some slightly better results. So let's see if we can get to a full screen mode here. There we go. See if I can zoom all the way in and see some of the pixels. It's a little bit difficult because the videos that I'm using right now aren't the highest quality, but you can kind of sense it here. You can definitely see the pixelation, so that's the results I'm talking about. But from a far away distance, it doesn't really become too big of an issue. Right now I have the projector screen at a distance of around, I would say, 80 to 100 inches, so it does create a pretty immersive and impressive experience if you're watching it in your living room. Just put it onto a wall. Obviously, if you have a professional projector screen, that would make the result even better, and the light would seem brighter as well. So all in all, I would say that the iRulu 20 Pro Android projector is something that you should consider if you're looking for something that has Android and Wi-Fi built in. It's slightly smarter and more advanced than your typical LED projector. With that being said, the video quality isn't the best for a $210 projector that we've seen, and also the size is slightly larger than I would say a super compact projector. But all in all, the audio quality is good, the image quality is passable and still enjoyable, and the Android and Wi-Fi chipset built in do enhance the unit and make it that much more usable if you don't want to plug in a phone or a computer directly. Very interesting from a tech standpoint. You can check out more details about this unit in our full written review, but this has been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. This has been the iRulu 20 Pro LED projector.